Good evening. What's happening, peeps? A bunch of people in chat already. Good to see you. Say hi to everybody. Find out what's going on. Anything new? Excuse me. Woof, my own. In anyone's life or anything like that. And we'll get into tonight's topic: the son of Sam. Back to my roots, if you would, on YouTube with the serial killer stuff. And there's some interesting things about Son of Sam that I didn't know until a couple of years ago, until I started getting into some John Douglas's books and stuff like that. But I'll share with you that you might not, most people don't know. And I didn't know for a long time, but I think it's pretty cool stuff. So let's say a hello to everyone. And how are we doing? Honeybee, what's up? Honeybee just put a new video out I have to share. Good to see you. Olivia, JJ, good to see you. Mustang, how are you? Jill, how are you? Rescue all the dogs. Yeah, just off for a short time. I want to try to get more on a more regular schedule. So at the very least, I give you weekly shows like this where we recap, the killers that were caught, maybe some that weren't, and then mix it in with an occasional stuff that's going on, mainly Florida. That's kind of the only thing. There's a couple local things I'm going to talk about that are going on, actually going on, I guess you could say directly to the fire department. We'll talk about that. Hey, David, I saw that on the comment before. So I wasn't born yet. I was born in 79, but it was and we're here in Pittsburgh. So we're probably, I think it's New York City's about 6.5 hour drive, but it was a big thing here. It was in all the local papers too. There was actually old articles. I don't have access to them. People have, there's pictures online from our McKeesport papers even. They had the Son of Sam. Like they would kind of rip the headlines that the New York Post had. So I saw a comment here. Here we go. Well, thank you. Brooke got this for me from Temu. She orders all kind of stuff from Temu, so she got me a bunch of these shirts. And I usually have my sleeves rolled up, but I like it. It was nice for a couple of days here. Got chilly again today. Today's going to be the coldest day probably for the next 10 days. We had like a high of 35. The low was like 31. It didn't move too much. And that's, it's March and it's Pennsylvania, so that's not terrible. We get through this weekend, which we have some rain and, 40s and stuff like that with lows in the upper 20s or low 30s. That's not the end of the world here. And then next week we have 60s and I think one day with 50s and highs, then 60s and 70s with not rain forecasted like through next Friday. So see people golfing, doing different things. I don't know if I'll get out. A lot of stuff going on, doing the school board thing, running for that. So thank you, Dave. Yeah, more stuff to do. I've talked, speaking, he's right underneath you is Frank. We've been talking about some other stuff, some other theories, things that have come up with that case with Keefe D. There was an interview today that was done where he's talking about the security guy, Reggie Wright. So it's really interesting. And after all these years, that the Tupac happens in September 1996, Biggie Smalls happens in March 1997. And for a couple years, it's big news. Then it kind of falls off, and then there's documentaries made about it, and there's music still being put out by these artists that they made. And someone like me listens to the original stuff. Big fans of both. At the time, I was probably on the East Coast side because we lived on the East Coast. But a lot of guys, including myself, love Tupac, Dr. Dre, Snoop, but it's all very interesting, but it's starting to play out. So if that goes to court next February, you're going to hear whatever they have with Reggie Wright. So I don't know about the laws in Las Vegas. If you want to compare this to Delphi as far as the third party goes, I know that the states are all different, but it's interesting if you're, I guess, of a certain age, probably more so than not. Like I think I was 17 when these murders happened. So it was professional period. Definitely was listening to both of their music, big time. So you felt it at that age, a little bit different. It almost would have been like if you're a little older than me and maybe one of the Beatles died and you came up around that time. It's what it felt like. So, and then lose both of them, and everyone just assumed that it was over the rap, and it seems like it was, or it wasn't. But now I don't know. So, what we'll do more shows about that. Frank Charles was with me there, and anyone else that is into that. David, if you are too. If you ever want to come up or anything. Frank was 29 at the time. Yeah, it's just that's a crime there. Even if you weren't necessarily like a rap fan or a Tupac fan, you knew who he was, and you always kind of wonder. I always wonder what happened with that, and if there was a resolution, if there was a trial, people would tune into it. Young kids, maybe some of them are, older people told them about the music or they discovered it themselves, but especially people like of a certain age, that generation, what do they call it, Generation X or whatever the fuck. I was born right at the tail end of that. So at 79, I definitely consider myself that. Went outside to play, street lights come on, all that type of stuff. So, but anyways, it's good to see everybody. So I'm going to have a couple of slides I'm going to show you. We're going to talk about David Berkowitz, the son of Sam, killing people, 6 people, wounding 11 in total. He committed a knife attack, too, before the shooting attack, where he stabbed 2 girls. We'll talk about that, too. A lot of things people don't know. He used a .44 Bulldog revolver. Kind of got pissed off when people said that the Bulldog revolver would compensate for the size of his penis because they said it was small. We come out to find out later that, and I don't know if you guys have known this or not, but David Berkowitz, although it's just really hard to prove something, I guess, they believed that he was a virgin. So sexually frustrated beyond belief, but we'll get into that. But Berkowitz, one thing I want to mention, I did another show on this with serial killers. He had head injuries as a kid too. So you add him to that. They're not super specific, but it's mentioned in many of his bios. He was born here. Let's bring this up here and I'll show this to you. And I'll show you kind of where he starts to go, kind of awry. You could almost see it in this. So these are a couple interesting things. Let me bring this up for you here. All right. Oops. I can't remove that thingy, I guess. That's a little chart I want to show you too. It's just in general. So let's make this bigger. We're going to go through this real fast. I use Wikipedia here because it was like the most compact. The other stuff all this information is good, but the other stuff is just like so stretched out. There's 10 paragraphs about this and that. So Berkowitz was born Richard David Felko. I don't know if you guys have known this. June 1st, 53 in Brooklyn. Within a few days of his birth, his biological mother, Elizabeth Betty Broader, as I believe how it's said, gave the child away. Broader, grown up part of impoverished family, working as a waitress. 36, she married a guy named Tony Felko, an Italian-American. After a marriage of less than 4 years, Felko left her for another woman. Berkowitz, biological father, Joseph Kleiman, was a married businessman. So he kind of had if you would, a stepdad in this Felko guy. Felko takes off. First of many abandonments throughout his life at his formidable age. And, maybe one, even at this age, you could come back from it if you have love, but it doesn't work that way. Joseph Kleinman was a married businessman who, like Berkowitz's mother, was Jewish. So he never knew his dad, right? Never knew his dad. When he finally, because he gets older, he discovers that he is adopted. He somehow seeks out, I don't know how he did it without days of the internet, found out about his dad. He had a family, took care of them, but he didn't take care of David Berkowitz. The infant Richard was adopted by Pearl and Nathan Berkowitz of the Bronx. They were Jewish hardware store retailers, modest means, and they were childless and middle-aged. So they were older. So, again, David Berkowitz is in his teens. You're not seeing, when my kids were in their teens or just not too long ago, I'm in my late 30s, early 40s, or even sometimes younger. So they're probably in their late 50s and 60s by the time he's a teenager. So let's keep that in mind too. So that it's tough. They reversed the order of the boys' first and middle name and changed it to David, Richard, and added their name Berkowitz. His childhood was somewhat troubled. He became infatuated with petty larceny and starting fires. These are precursor crimes, always precursor crimes. Larceny, going into cars. You're entering people's private domains. It's giving you power. Start going into people's houses, peeping Tom type stuff. And almost all these killers that have a sexual twist to them do this. Sometimes people just do it maybe because they're on drugs and they want to go in and do something, but they're not spending a ton of time in the house. They want to grab some shit, get out of there, and go trade it for whatever their drug of choice is. Neighbors and relatives will recall Berkowitz as difficult, spoiled, and a bully. Adoptive parents consulted at least one psychotherapist due to his misconduct. His misbehavior never resulted in legal intervention or serious mention in school records. So again, he's kind of flying under the radar, right? This part is very interesting here. And this is where everything, in my opinion, and I think you guys will see this too, this is where everything kind of breaks down. Berkowitz's adoptive mother dies of breast cancer when he's 14 years old. So I can't pinpoint the exact time, but in the neighborhood of this time is when he finds out, he hears the word adoptive. And, so maybe slightly before then, his home life became strained in later years, particularly because he disliked his adoptive father's second wife. So he's living with this guy who adopted him, and his mother passed away. He was close to his mother. So by all accounts, Berkowitz's adoptive mother that gave him the name Berkowitz was the one kind of loving force in his life. Once he loses her, it gets tough. He lived with his father while attending Columbus High School. In college, in a 4.5-room apartment, and there's the address there, Dresser Loop, which is going to be close where these stabbings happen. He joins the Air Force at 17. After an honorable discharge, he located his birth mother, Betty. After a few visits, she disclosed the details of his birth greatly. So it's a little bit later when he finally finds her. He finds everything else about his birth. Now, it doesn't say in this article, but around the time that he goes away to the Air Force or to the Army, thinking about guys I work with today, we were talking about, they were in the Air Force. And anyways, he goes to the Army. His new family leaves and goes to Florida and leaves him back home. And they basically abandon him. So I don't know the details behind that. I don't know if Berkowitz said, hey, I'm going to go to the service where we're moving away. But he's abandoned yet again. It located Betty. A few visits, she disclosed the details of his birth. The news greatly disturbed Berkowitz, and he was particularly distraught by the array of reluctant father figures. So all these people came around, right? And all these potential father figures. And his mother, he doesn't blame the people that came around for his mother. He blames his mother. So he has this overall, he's a misogynist. But he has this overall under this sense of like overwhelming when around women. He doesn't do good with them at school. They don't talk to him. And so he's able to point the finger for all this chaos in his life and all this sadness and stress in his life. And he's able to just kind of put it on women. So this is where this comes from, this hatred of women. And he was one of the biggest women-hating killers, even though he killed 6. There's people that have killed more, but he just hated women. He described discovery of his birth details as the primary crisis of his life. Revelation had shattered his sense of identity. His communication with his birth mother later lapsed, but for a time he remained in communication with his adoptive sister, Rosalind. Berkowitz attended Bronx Community College for a year, went on to work as a driver for a co-op city taxi company, subsequently had several non-professional jobs. So what do we know here? He's a disorganized killer. He's not a skilled laborer. We're seeing that. He has trouble with relationships. And as we learn about his killing, and he didn't pick people out early on. He picked them out kind of on the spot wrong. They were at the wrong place at the wrong time. But again, Postal Service, these are such like attempting to be something, not knocking any postal workers at all, but there are some people, especially in the previous years, that wanted to work as a cop or something, and they ended up at the Postal Service. So again, he has no power. He has no power. But this other slide here, when I have it up, I just want to show it to you. Let's get to this one first. So his killings start in 1976, the Son of Sam killings. In December 1975, a few months before the Son of Sam's killing start in July of 1976, Berkowitz claimed he was 22, committed his first attack Christmas Eve when he used a hunting knife to stab 2 women in the city co-op. First alleged victim, a Hispanic woman, never identified police. The second, 15-year-old Michelle Foreman, a sophomore at Truman High School. He stabbed 6 times on a bridge near Drazer Loop. That's where he lived, and whose injuries were serious enough to be hospitalized. Berkowitz never suspected of crime. Soon afterward, he relocated to an apartment in Yonkers. So he commits this. No, he gets away with this initially, and it's a random, it's a stranger crime. They're very hard to, and it's a very disorganized thing. He didn't follow these girls. He kind of saw them in the store and then near a bridge, or it's not really clear whether it was in a store or near a bridge. And again, 1975, there's no cameras around, right? So as I'm looking through this and I'm looking for things for Berkowitz, I came across this. I could share this too. And it's a really good, if you're not sure of, like, let's say you're hearing stuff on the news and some details are being given out and you say, hey, I wonder if this is an organized killer or a disorganized killer. So on our far left are our common denominators, and then we have disorganized and organized. So if you would have a body and it would be disfigured, there's a good chance that's a disorganized. Organized is hidden. Could always have combinations where it's disfigured and hidden, but there's other things too. It lists residents close to the crime, further from the crime. So IQ and stuff like that. I just thought that was an interesting thing. But I'm going to take some questions here and see what you guys are chatting about in a second. But first, let me show you this. So this is the first thing that I want you to know about David Berkowitz. And, Son of Sam, he's talking about his neighbor, excuse me, Sam Carr. And he had a dog, which was a lab. It was either lab or labradoodle. Some people just say lab. Some say labradoodle. But the dog's name was Harvey. Okay. The dog's name was Harvey. And it was the Son of Sam. That's where that was the thing that he had told people. He told people that in letters, writing police lieutenants, writing Jimmy Breslin, who in a while, I'm going to show you a background here as we get to talking about other stuff. And there's pictures of Jimmy Breslin. It's an interesting story, an interesting report. There was people with later years that had said different things, but interviewed some while researching. This is John Douglas when his book comes out. When researching Berkowitz, he had surmised his feelings of inadequacy. Douglas says Berkowitz killed out of resentment, low self-esteem, and prepared to use this to his advantage. He and his partner, wrestler, they talk about Bob Wrestler, who died in 2013, interviewed Berkowitz when he was at Attica. And he said that he would dart back and forth. He would try to read their faces. This is Berkowitz. Berkowitz is trying to read the faces of the profiler. So he's trying to do to them what they're doing to him. After explaining the interview to help law enforcement solve future case, possibly help intervene with children who displayed that, Douglas brought out a newspaper. And he's winning the Son of Sam over here in this talk. And if you watch the show Mine Hunters, they do a pretty good job depicting this. I've never seen they don't have transcripts from the interviews because they didn't take tapes in. And a lot of times they didn't even take notes or anything in. They would leave the room and then write stuff down. They found that the killers would be more forthcoming. So this is what John Douglas is saying in the interview. This is where the quotation come from. David, in Wichita, Kansas, there's a killer who calls himself the BTK Strangler, and he mentions you in his letters to the media, Douglas told him. He wants to be powerful like you. His ego assuaged. The killer opened up. Berkowitz leaned back in his chair, adjusted himself into a more comfortable position, and said, what do you want to know? So now David Berkowitz, that are giving him the power. Douglas writes he developed a rapport and moving on. At one point, Berkowitz began talking about Sam, the supposed possessed dog that drove him to kill, giving him his now famous moniker. Hey, David, knock off the bullshit, Douglas said to Berkowitz. The dog had nothing to do with it. He laughed and nodded. He writes and conceded that I was right. So, again, if you guys have never heard that before, David Berkowitz did David Berkowitz did admit to Douglas and later to other people, he's now saved, that was a made-up story. He talked about, just seeing The Exorcist and getting ideas or what have you from that. So, but those are the things I wanted to show you. I got some background stuff here I'm going to play, and then we'll get into the talking portion here. Just a bunch of different pictures we're going to see. Let's get that going. Hold on a second. We are going to share this, and like I said, we'll answer any questions or any comments you guys got. And we'll just let this roll in the background. Already roll. Start it over. All right. So you're just going to see a bunch of pictures and stuff like that. Yeah, the last thing I don't think I had up for you, but I wanted to read that to you. That was an article from John Douglas when they were talking about his book. So I noticed that whenever I was moving back. I was like, oh, I probably don't have it. Yeah, Olivia, Sam's letters did drive them crazy. They didn't know what they were dealing with. I mean, you're kind of in the precursor to satanic panic. So they're looking into all kind of things, and he enjoyed that power. He talked about early on after a few killings walking through the mall, and he felt, now no one knows me. The people should know me. I wish I had like a machine gun, is what he said, was what his quote was. And people would know who I am. So, he's driven by feelings of inadequacy, abandonment. And then someone commented here, abandonment seems to be a constant thing. And there was you up here in a comment before, Honeybee. Yeah, it definitely is. It's not every single one, but it's a lot. And, you see these guys who, their moms or single moms, they're trying to make it. Maybe there's multiple guys that come into their lives for, I'm not judging the moms for that. And then they end up hating the moms for it. Sometimes the moms are just mean and just lock them in the goddamn basement, like Ed Kemper or something like that. But he had people that loved him. They were older. They weren't his real parents. And like I said, the one relationship that he seemed to have was good. That's Jimmy Breslin, by the way, the reporter. I think it was the New York Post. And they would have back and forth, him and Sam, or later we know David Berkowitz, that they would talk back and forth to each other in the newspaper. Well, I will get that chart up for Yinz too here, because that was an interesting chart. But you could take a picture of it, or I could share it. I'll share both things in the in my community page here also. But that always interests me. Like, that was one of the things with Delphi. You didn't get a lot of information, right? And even like I didn't do a ton of coverage here, actually any, or I just wasn't into the case at the time. I was doing other things. Idaho, you would get information you would get there. You're like thinking, okay, this is an organized situation here with the allegations that are being made. There's one of the letters, but by the allegations that are being made by what's up, CJK, by the law enforcement, left his phone, stalked this one or that one. So, but I always find that interesting. And then you can kind of, once you pare that down, you're kind of in a 50% area then, and you could say, okay, this is, based on the way this looked like this, or the killer's behavior was this or that, this was his motivation for it. And then you could kind of figure it out. And one of the things that I couldn't find, that if anyone could find it, you could share it on my page anywhere, or email me, kevlower148 gmail.com. Actual criminal profile of this. Because what they'll do right around that time, I don't know if they were given profiles, probably not 75, 76. Oh, it could have been. It could have been. I'm not exactly sure of the years, but it would be close. But later on, there would have been something done, like they profiled Jack the Ripper. Whatever. I've never been able to find exactly that. The original criminal profiler was in New York City. I can't remember the guy's name, but he caught the Mad Bomber. Actually predicted what kind of suit he would have on. He's kind of the father of profiling. And God, I can't remember his name right now. But yeah, they were talking about that. David was in here. He said he was 22 at the time, but it was. I mean, it's a lot of kids. You'd go sit in your car, and that's where you would hang out at. And it was just, that's happening in New York City. Could it happen anywhere? I think was like the thing as it rippled across the country. But it was just like, and then, I think a lot of people are like, how can that happen in New York City? I'm sure it has. I haven't seen anything. Maybe you can find that on YouTube. You could look it up. But I'm sure that there were people analyzing it. I don't know if they ever said, hey, according to this has the felon's claw, or his eye looks like a knife, or different things that people look at when they look at your handwriting. But I'm sure that there was people looking at it. Again, in the 1970s, you have a lot of serial killer activity across the country, not just California. Multiple people operating in the same area, and police weren't sharing information with each other. So this was all, NYPD, and then they have they call it the Omega Squad, and it's at its biggest, I think it was 30 police officers. And then there may or may not have been some, like, I'm not saying infighting, but like, hey, we want to solve the case. We want to be the ones that solve the case. These two guys from Queens who are working it, or whatever. So you had those things happening. So now in New York City with all the cameras, you're just not really going to get away with anything. It's going to be very hard pressed to do that. So strong slant. Yeah, I don't know a ton about handwriting, just a little bit. The Alexa lady that used to, kind of still does or not, it would come on Sonny Justice with Aspen and them. She was doing Richard Allen's handwriting. Excuse me, but she would just say in general, this is what kind of things we look for. And I think all that's interesting. And I think that one of the things they do now is they use all that and piece all that together and put all that data together. And then there's certain people, maybe there's only a couple hundred in the world that can look at that data and say, hey, this is we spit out this receipt. This is what we're looking for. So again, that's one of the things that I just think is just incredibly interesting. So, but anyways, so he set thousands of nuisance fires as a kid. We know that the McDonald triad, or the homicidal triad, we don't know anything about bedwetting or anything that I could find if he did that, or cruelty to animals. But he was more invasive, breaking into your car, and then, maybe eventually homes. Could probably almost guarantee you he did some peeping Tom stuff, whether he was caught or not. He did the 2 stabbings in 1975. And then, he didn't kill anyone. The 15-year-old girl got away, and she wasn't from here, and she was afraid, and maybe not hurt that bad. But the other girl got stabbed many times, but she still lived. So he purchases, supposedly illegally, so I don't know whose it is, the 44 Bulldog revolver. He then would go around and look prospective lover lanes. He would almost look for 2 people in a car, and he would come up on the passenger side because he wanted to shoot and kill the girl. And most men, in the 70s, especially, if you're out, you would assume if there's 2 people out, necking, as they used to say, that maybe the guy would be driving, the woman be in the passenger seat. On one occasion, he shot a guy who he thought was a girl because he had long hair. But he ends up killing 6 people and wounding. The number that I've seen was 7, but I think it's 9 that lived. And a lot of times the guys would live. A couple occasions the girl lived. But in his letters, here's an interesting thing. Maybe you didn't know. In his letters, he always spelled woman, WEMON. And the guy had a reasonably high IQ. Despite being, disorganized, he couldn't control his emotions, but he always spelled that word wrong, so it was purposely misspelled. And I've never explained why they think that he spelled it that way. One guy says maybe because if you take the W out, you put an N there that says demon. Maybe, I don't know. But I'd like to hear it from him. But he never said it. Again, his neighbor's name was Sam Carr. He threw some kind of firebomb into the backyard at one point. The dog, obviously, barking. Berkowitz didn't like at all. But the dog was a lab named Harvey. I can't tell you for sure if it was a labradoodle or just a lab. But people call it both. His MO. So his MO, with the exception of one killing where he came up on a girl on the street and shot her. After a few killings, he was very confident at that point. Was he would come up, he'd park down the street. He would basically pick a car out, and these people are, having a time and are making out or whatever in a car in known lovers' lanes. He'd park far enough away where he'd walk up on foot, and he would go and he would fire bullets into the car through the passenger side of the car, where he assumed the woman was. He was looking for girls with long dark hair. Later, he said he saw his mother when he saw these girls. So again, you have this. There's another theme. You have the Ed Kemper, the Gary Ridgway. They're repeatedly over and over killing their mother. So it's just beyond bizarre. But it seems to you have the same things. These childhood problems or questions that the head injury. It's just. Not all, but a lot of them have these same exact characteristics. So, like I said, they believe he was a virgin at the time. So the killing goes on from July of 76 to July of 77. He's arrested. I think it's August the 10th of 77. He's a disorganized killer. And the motive, people will list the motive and they'll say he's misogyny is the motive. Yeah, he definitely hated women, but he was acting out against women, women who wouldn't give him the time of day, and he was able to somehow clump them in with his mother that had abandoned him, in his opinion. And it's weird how that comes out. Received obviously good arms training from probably the best place you could receive arm training, right, in the Army or the United States Service. So yeah, he was captured 8/10/77. Some stuff after conviction that happened. He's been born again. He's made statements, and there's a Netflix show about it called Sons of Sam. And I encourage you to watch it. I don't buy into that theory necessarily, but it's interesting. And there was Maury was the guy. I can't remember the guy's last name that was a reporter, and he thought there was multiple, but he has said in later interviews that he was part of a satanic cult and there was multiple people doing these things. But he's making these comments after satanic panic becomes a thing. The killings happen before you get into the early 80s, and then that happens. Once that all comes about, then he's making this stuff. And there's people that believe that theory. And listen, it's not there. I've heard crazier things. Than that, but I just think that he's the guy. And I think they know why he did it. Some of the pictures that come up here, I'm not sure what order they're in, but there's pictures from his apartment. He would write on his walls. There would be holes in his walls. And he would say, people would come out and tell me these voices would tell me to do things, that I'd punch holes in a wall. He'd write things on the walls. They think this was all done after the fact, after he began, his killing, and saying, hey, if I ever get caught, this is what I'm going to say. He has this feeling that he's smarter than the police, that he can't get caught. He has some confidence. He didn't get caught for the stabbing. Then there's one shooting. Then there's a second. Now, okay, he's going to go boom. He's going to shoot that girl walking down the street in basically broad daylight at that time of year, and gets away with it. Here's his apartment. Disorganized killer apartment, right? If you look at that, you could say, wow, that's not an organized, fastidious person. And that's not BTK's apartment. That's not what that looked like. And maybe it looked a little more like Richard Ramirez's apartment or something. But he was, And again, you look at the mugshots. We talk about mugshots all the time in current cases and stuff like that. And it's just, I don't think any of that looks like Berkowitz. The guy on the left looks like the guy that they stabbed in The Sopranos and still hit with the sweeper. And the guy on the right, I don't even know what that looks like. So again, there's another, I don't think it's Berkowitz. The face is too skinny. You see that chubby face. So, I definitely think he had some bad brain wiring, B, and I think that there's other things that happen. But yeah, just, that's one of the girls that survived, by the way. Just like all these things lined up, and it was almost like he was almost destined to be some kind of just sick fuck like this. Summer Sam is a really cool movie. I like Spike Lee. I like a lot of his movies. I know he's controversial. He's not for everybody, but Do the Right Thing is one of my favorite movies. I actually have a shirt that says Bed-Stuy, Do or Die, like Radio Raheem. Gun's a lot more impersonal than a knife. Yeah. So he wasn't the kind like that where he ran and stabbed people. He wasn't taking them anywhere and doing anything like that. But the gun too, he was so inept and so inadequate. He probably didn't think I can't kill these people with a knife. For whatever reason, I can't do it. But I know if I get this 45, and I've received weapons training in the military, that I could kill people. I could scare people with this, and the 44 caliber killer. You'll see some of the pictures here and some of the articles that come up, that say that. So let's go back to the beginning here, and I'll tell you about some of these pictures. We'll stop it on a couple of them too. Some of the letters and stuff like that, we'll stop it on. If you're in my Discord, I shared a link. I can't remember what it's called. All Things Son of Sam or something like that. And for those of you that are like in the case files and documents and stuff like that, I kind of stumbled across it. It's a really cool library. And you could look up police reports. You could look up psychiatric reports, like anything that's basically pretty much everything's out there. And you can go in there and look at that. This is in more recent times, obviously. It says 2023. Not sure what that says. Bunch of cops with mustaches reading the paper. I want to show you some of the letters here. Old Jimmy Breslin. Okay, here's one letter. Can't really make it bigger, but I'm deeply hurt by your calling me a woman hater. There it is, WEMON, Weemon. So I don't know. I'm sure people have turned this upside down and done a bunch of other things with it, but he's clearly a guy. If you look, I am not, but I am not a monster. I mean, he uses better capitalization and punctuation than some YouTubers I know. I'm the son of Sam. I'm a vile brat. When Father Sam gets drunk, he gets mean, beats his family. So when these people are looking at these letters, okay, here's this guy. If he's the killer, it's not his fault. He's doing these things because of something else. He can't help it. He's not necessarily the powerful one. He's projecting to the police, but this force behind him is powerful, and he could do whatever he needs to do, and they just want this and that. But you could look these letters up. Just look up Son of Sam letters. Do an image search, whatever search engine you like. He actually leaves one letter at a crime scene, made out to the was it the lieutenant? I don't know if he's a lieutenant or captain who was in charge of the case. Here's a Jimmy Breslin. Whoops. Let's go back. I thought I had that on pause. I apologize. So Jimmy Breslin's the reporter. They have a back and forth, I guess, to say the least. It's another interesting thing about this case. These guys kind of went back and forth. What you kind of saw with Zodiac was he would put stuff in the paper or ask for things to get put in the paper right directly to the police and then ask them to communicate through some back ad or someone selling drapes or something. You know what I mean? And they would say, okay, we will do this or we will do that or whatever the case may be. But these guys were kind of like going at each other almost. Hello from the gutters in New York City, which are filled with dog manure, vomit, stale wine, urine, blah, 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 blah. So he is New York City, and he's the castaway stuff from New York City, the stuff that you don't think about anymore. He's in charge of that almost. More Jimmy Breslin stuff, and these are this is his handwriting. Berkowitz. Again, I call himself Mr. Monster. And again, a lot of the stuff we're not even sure. There's a courtroom sketch. As you can see, there are all kind of attorneys, all kind of people there. Berkowitz would be this guy here as you look at it. But this is when sentence is being handed down. And he is away. He actually gets up he has parole after 25 years. So he's had a couple hearings. I think he got 78. I think it was about a year after his arrest. He gets arrested in August, if I'm not mistaken, and then maybe less than a year. And then the following May or June, he pleads, and then he's sentenced in that June of the following year. That is one of the one of the scenes there, one of the crime scenes. Which is going to sit there because I'm not playing it. But anyways, yes, JJ, he is still alive. He's done interviews. If you guys ever watch Vlad TV, which is a place that I go to watch a lot of he interviews everybody, but he's the Tupac stuff, Keefe D, a lot of the Keefe D stuff who admitted to being in the car when Tupac was killed and said his nephew, Orlando Brown, killed Tupac. Whether that ends up being true or not, that all kind of broke on Vlad TV. So he has a Vlad TV interview. He has some other interviews, but really all he wants to talk about is his born-again Christianity, which I don't really study him anymore. So I'm not going to say, hey, I believe it or I think it's bullshit or whatever. Hopefully for him, it's true, but I don't know. But he's like a preacher now, like in church or that type of thing. So he's kind of gone full circle, if you will, if I could quote the great Dusty Rhodes. But yeah, still alive. And he's still, like I said, New York, 25 life sentence, 20 with parole after 25 years. So I don't know how often he gets up for parole, but you just can't imagine that there's a way that he's going to get paroled. I mean, even if you have a judge that's a little bit out there, so I don't know. It's the son of Sam, and he's an old guy. These things happen almost 50 years ago. The stabbing will happen 50 years ago this Christmas Eve. And then the shootings happened that summer. But yeah, the whole city in lockdown, girls were changing their hair. Well, in the movie Son of Sam by Spike Lee, it was mentioned there by David. Definitely a good movie, a cool movie. John Leguizamo, I think it's Mira Sorvino, Adrian Brody. It's a really good movie, and it covers. So like the backdrop is the Son of Sam, right? It's not the movie's about the characters, but it's the backdrop and how they're all reacting and the pressure that's being put on and things that they're doing because they're scared. And some of the things that they do aren't good things, but it's excellent. And girls are dyeing their hair. He was only killing in Queens, and then he left Queens and he moved. So it was a whole thing. You know what I mean? And man. What an interesting tale it was. And, you have the right guy. I don't think anyone's out there saying, oh, he didn't do it. Even the people that think there was that Maury, the reporter angle, and thinks it was some kind of satanic cult or something like that, he would have been involved with it too. But it's interesting, but he hated women. Whether he was a virgin or not, he did not do well with girls or asking him on dates or, meeting a girl at a bar or having a beer. and he resented them for that. He goes back to resenting his mother who gave him away and led him, in his opinion, led him down that life where he lost his mom at age 14. That stepmom that cared about him, Mrs. Berkowitz, lost her to breast cancer, right? That was the one relationship that he had that was probably positive in life. Has the stepdad, who has the new mom, and David's probably 15, 16, kind of a goofy looking kid, maybe a little weird. I don't really want him around. I have this other family. And then, at age 17, as we see his, this is actually a picture for when he was arrested. It's not the military picture. I'm pretty sure that's the night he was arrested after he was talked to for a while. He took his picture. I'm pretty sure that's what that is, even though that shirt looks like that. I think that's the shirt he gets maybe when he's going into jail or something like. You're not going to have pork chops like that in the military, especially in the 70s. This is a little bit later on. But anyways, and he just at that point, he just has this disdain for women, just absolute disdain for them. So it's possible now the stepmom, I'm talking about the stepmom Berkowitz, that they adopted him. So she was older, a lot older than him. And usually, just the way it is, I see a lot of it around here. I had a lot of friends growing up whose grandparents raised them for different reasons. And you just get away with more shit. They're not as on their toes or even up with technology. There's the guy that plays him in Mindhunter. I always encourage you to watch that. But there's not too many accounts of it, other than what we have from Berkowitz, right? So do we believe that part? There's a lot of people that they shut down. They don't want to talk about their moms, these killers. Some of them won't shut up about him. Some of them will tell you, like an Ed Kemper, hey, this is why I did all this, because of her. And this is what I did, why I did what I did to her after I killed her, which is insanity. But it's possible, but it's, that dark hair going after mom. And let me be clear on that. I'm not 100% sure whose mom he's going after. I was always under the impression prior to like maybe a year or two ago that he was talking about his biological mom, but we know that his adopted mom had dark hair. I think biological mom did too, but it makes sense to me that he's killing the biological mom. But Honeybee, if I'm wrong about that, and it's the mom that was from age till he had for 14 years without a breast cancer, that could make things very interesting. But again, we're only getting things out of Berkowitz, and he's not giving us that really. I don't watch too many of his religious interviews, but I'm under the impression that even in those, he doesn't talk a lot about it. So that's an interesting point. But we know women issue. He has this break at 17 where the family goes to Florida and lives, and he goes to the military. And I don't know if that's planned, where it's like, hey, Dad, I'm going to the military. Well, hey, if you go to the military, we're going to Florida. Or, hey, we're going to Florida. You have to go to military. He does mention feeling abandoned. But again, this guy was pointing fingers at a lot of different things. He was saying there was demons were taking him over and things like that. And even in those letters, it wasn't his fault. He's killing these women and shooting at their boyfriends, but it's not his fault. And here's why it's not his fault. And he's telling you in his letters ahead of time. So if I get caught, this is what I'm going to do. This. If I get caught, I'm doing all this stuff here to my apartment. You know what I mean? And making it look like it's right. Making it look like I'm a crazy person. He was psychologically, I don't think he was well. I don't know what the actual diagnosis was, but he was competent to stand trial. The state psychiatrist said that, like, hey, this guy's a little fucking loopy. However, he knows right from wrong, right? He knows right from wrong. He's sneaking up on people. He's being calculated. And one of the other things too, I want to mention this with Berkowitz, and it's the same way he told these guys this too. Your John Douglases and your Robert Wrestlers and stuff like that. He returned to the scenes of the crimes too. And what he would do is it's hard to return to the scene of a crime when it was in a car and that car is no longer there. But he would roll around the grass next to where this happened at, or where he walked through or whatever. So, yes, Berkowitz is still alive. He would be, we say his birthday was 50 something. I think he's in the neighborhood of 70 now. And there's some newer pictures in here, and that's where he's doing his preaching or whatever. And again, I'm not knocking him for it. I hope that it's truly happened for him, but you killed 6 people. So, And I don't think there's any more, with other killers. Hey, maybe there's more. I don't think there's any more. I think when Berkowitz was working that whole Son of Sam, dog talking to me, demon shit, that he would have thrown everything out there with that. Hey, there was other people too. Remember how he got caught? He got caught because of a parking ticket, right? They were looking for his car. He parked too close to a hydrant. There ended up being a ticket there. They went back and were looking, hey, what kind of cars? Hey, they're looking for this particular car. And here it is, parked here. Who's the driver? And at that point, you could see the probably cops looking at the picture of Berkowitz from his driver's picture and looking at these sketches like, looks like a white guy with dark hair. Well, let's go see. And then they go and see and then find out it's him, wait for him to come out of his apartment, arrest him. And he's kind of like, hey, you got me. And if you see them pictures of him and there's video of him getting arrested, deer in headlights look. So, yeah, look at those. They look like two totally different people, right? So sketches anymore, I don't know. And these are back in the day. These aren't, these are guys and gals drawing with their hands. They're not computer aided or anything like that. No, I don't think so. I think once you cross that point, I think when people were born, there could be some wiring issues there that maybe don't come out because they have a good life. But once you cross these lines, I don't think so either. I really don't. Like, you're going to be in jail, dude. And if you believe in what you're saying and you're helping other people, then yeah, you're going to go to your reward for doing what you're doing. But here on this planet, we're not rolling the dice. We can't do that. We just can't do that. No. And this is, you murdered 6 different people. You went out hunting. This wasn't like, hey, 2 guys get into a fight and one of the other guy accidentally kills the guy. And it's, after 20 years, hey, I feel so bad. That type of thing. This, and there's laws because of him. Let's not forget the Son of Sam laws. He was writing, he was going to profit from them. And here's the thing, that their states have laws, the different Son of Sam laws. And I believe every state in the union does not have a Son of Sam law. I'm not 100% sure. Again, it's not a legal channel. So that's why I'm not covering like other cases or the things developing. The Tupac thing is interesting, because that's fresh, but like appeals or anything like that, or it's not my wheelhouse, but it's interesting though, isn't it? As we talk about that with the Son of Sam angle to it anyway. So, but yeah, I don't see it either. I don't think he's ever going to get it. I don't think you're going to be the judge that let the Son of Sam out. And even if he goes and opens up a homeless shelter for the rest of his days, man, this guy was, he was vile. He wasn't as hands-on. And maybe some people would say, well, it was a gun, he still killed people, but it was just this hatred he hated women so much. He went out and shot women that he didn't know that looked like his mom with the dark hair. Yeah, I don't know if you could rewire that. I don't think you can. It's like people that hurt children. I just think that they're going to hurt children. That's what they're going to do. And it's our obligation as adults to keep those people away from children, and by keeping them behind bars. And, that's my 2 cents on it. But we're creeping near an hour. I give you pretty much what I had for the Son of Sam stuff. I might do a poll again next time to ask you some people we haven't covered yet. Let me get that. Some people that we haven't covered yet, different things like that. I want to do another Manson thing. The Tupac stuff's been interesting though, so maybe we'll see that. But I'm going to do my best to get something next week. As the weather gets nicer, I'll be able to do more stuff on the porch. This porch is so goddamn windy and cold in the winter. So I'll do a couple porch videos. We have another guy retiring. I'm getting old because this kid that's retired, I say kid, he got hired after me. So he only has 20 years on, and I'll start my 24th next month. So we have that going on Friday. I forget what else. A couple other things next week. I'm doing the school board thing. So I'm making my rounds there, meeting with people. We're doing endorsements for our union and stuff like that. So there's stuff going on, but I'll have time. So I hope you learned something tonight about this. The stabbings before, he admitted that this Son of Sam thing wasn't real later on. And he did say that he was a member of a satanic cult too. So, maybe everything he said is full of shit, or maybe everything he said is true. I don't know. the cult part, I don't see it because I didn't see any evidence at the time. It wasn't being looked at necessarily at that time. That stuff all came out later, but doesn't mean it didn't happen or it isn't true. So I thank you everyone for coming in and joining. And when we catch it on replay, leave a comment if you have any questions. If anyone has a profile for David Berkowitz or the Son of Sam, please send it to me because I really wanted to see what it said. I could have Douglas talking about it, Wrestler talking about it, but the actual thing on paper would be awesome to see. And we'll get into more stuff, but keep following the Keefe D stuff, the Tupac stuff. It's interesting, whatever you believe, if you're into that. And then your favorite cases, follow your favorite creators, and do what makes you happy. Let everyone else do what they want to do. It's a free country and it's a free platform. So if people want to be happy, it's the right as an American to be happy, right? I guess, but I think it's your right as a human to be happy. So let's get it going. Let's keep it wrong, keep the goodwill rolling, and keep spreading the word about Flora. All right. And when you're talking to any new true crime cases, check out Flora. Just go to YouTube and look up Flora stuff. Doesn't even have to be my stuff. Just look up stuff that's not, Looney Tunes, and then we can go from there. But I'm gonna leave you to it. I'll have a drink of my Market District Peach Oolong Tea, which is really good. And I thank you all for coming. Good chat tonight. I hope you learned a little bit of something. And I'll share them things on my community page. Check them out too. You document guys and gals. Some of you are fantastic with the documents. I'll share that link and you can dig through. There's all kind of shit there. If you want to get into it, man, it's like, maybe you pack up a bowl, have some pretzels and some mustard, and read documents tonight if you want to do that. So thank you all so much for coming in. I hope you enjoyed the deep dive we did on David Berkowitz, Son of Sam. All right. Talk to you guys soon. Coach